There's lights in the sky. Welcome to a very different MIDI Explores, where today we're in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk and we're going to follow the UFO trail. Welcome to MIDI Explores, and today, as I said, we're going to walk through Rendlesham Forest and we're going to follow the UFO trail, which takes us to the alleged landing site of a UFO back in 1980. Now, the events that happened, as I'll explain a bit more later, was in 1980 between the 25th and the 28th of December. What we've got coming up in front of us is two Air Force bases. You've got the Woodbridge Air Force Base and the Bentwaters Air Force Base, which were both used by the Americans during the Cold War. And on that particular night, how it started was there was a report from the public that they'd seen a strange object flying in the sky above their house. And then reports came from the guards in various different places of the bases that there was lights, sure don't fall over, there was lights shining in the forest, which they duly investigated. So we're going to try and follow that and see what we can figure out from it, including trying to decipher the government's official explanation that it was the Orphan Nest Lighthouse, which I've been to and I know where it is, and I very much doubt that's correct, but we'll have a look and go from there.
There's lights in the sky.
So here we are, we're about a quarter of a mile in, but this gives you some idea of the forest and what it looks like inside it. Even though a lot of this isn't the original forest, it was massively replanted after the storms in 1987 destroyed a lot of this forest. So a lot of these trees were sort of planted straight after that. But imagine running through here at night, and this is what I'll go quickly onto one of the theories the government came forward with. It's the Orphan Nest Lighthouse, which is about 8 miles away in this direction. I'll confirm that. I've got 8 miles stuck in my head, but I'll print on the screen exactly how far it is. Now, if you can tell me a load of US Air Force personnel, trained men, would mistake a lighthouse that's 6 to 8 miles away in that direction for something that's in the woods moving around, then no, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. That solution to me doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I understand at night you can see a lighthouse for a little while, but to be fooled into thinking the lighthouse was causing these lights in these trees, no, I'm not buying that. I've got to say that we're not a million miles away from the car park or the road. I can hear a plane flying around. It's eerily quiet in here. There's just nothing. Imagine running around here at night. Oh my lord. It's a beautiful area. Of course, like I say, a lot of these trees were planted after 1987, when we had the big storm that destroyed a lot of this forest. But some of it still remains, as you can see. And it's really quite beautiful, actually. So we're continuing along the trail. We're actually heading straight towards RAF Woodbridge. It's straight in front of us. So in a minute we'll be at the East Gate, which is where all the action really started, as they went out into the forest to try and figure out exactly what was happening. So where we are now is we're approaching the East Gate, which is up here on the left. Well, this is one of the roads. It's been freshly done, but it's one of the original patrol roads where they used to patrol outside the base to make sure no one was trying to break in or cause disturbance. So on the night in question, the lights started somewhere over here in the forest. And also the very little reported fact is that the public had actually rang into the base saying they'd seen things over their gardens and things like that. And also a lot of the airbase personnel saw things in the sky, which doesn't get reported very often. They just talk about the thing in the forest. But there was actually 3 ships they saw in the sky, allegedly. One sort of master ship and 2 others that seemed to be flying around over the forest. Now those same ships, or probably the same ships, came back 2 nights later and were flying over the base, firing beams of light down into the bunkers where possibly there was nuclear weapons. That can't be confirmed. But beams of light being beamed down onto the ground as if they were looking at something. Now that wasn't just seen by the original guy, well I can't remember his name, I'll write it on the screen. I think it's Colonel Holt from memory, who actually saw the UFO and went to it and touched it, as we'll see in a minute. But this was also seen by the base commander and loads of other personnel. And in fact, in one of the statements, Colonel Holt actually says that, or Captain Holt, I can't remember his full name, loads of staff saw them take off. I don't know. One thing's for definite, through there you wouldn't see a lighthouse that's 6 to 8 miles away. Not in my mind anyway. So here we are at the fabled East Gate. This is where everything effectively started after there had been reports of the public, strange lights and strange objects flying over gardens, etc. The security patrols at this gate made their way into the forest after calling I think it was Captain Holt at the time, but if I'm wrong I'll correct that on the screen. So this gate is where everything came from. So I'm not sure if that's the original security hut. I think it is. So there we have, straight into the Air Force Base. So they called the base commander or warden, whatever he was at the time, they called him to this gate because they'd had reports, and also security staff here had seen lights directly behind us, which as you turn round, so straight in this direction is where they saw the lights, and we're going to follow that path which takes us straight towards the alleged landing site. It's really interesting. You can still see the white lines on the original US Air Force Base. It's all around us. Looks like somebody's broke in there by the looks of things. There's always some idiots. I'm not sure what they use this for now. I'll try and find out and write it on the screen. I don't think it's used as an airbase. It's not an airbase anymore. I think they still use Bentwaters, which is over the other side. There's the Air Force Base. Oops. It goes right down there. The runway is right in front of us there. Just there is the runway. So, he says, go back to normal. And there we go. So that's the east gate. I'll say you still see the white lines on the road here. So imagine this was a guarded gate. Nothing came this way at all. And so on that particular night when they got the shout, oh, there's Daisy. They basically were seeing lights down here, and later on lights in the sky as well, which no one ever talks about. It's always about, oh, it's a landing, it was a landing. The lights in the sky were seen by loads and loads of people, members of the public and all sorts. So what we're going to do now is follow this straight the way down to the bottom, and then we end towards what was effectively the alleged landing site.
See how they could think it was the lighthouse, because the wood is just really dense.
So roughly at this point, from the east gate, when they went into the forest, they started getting loads of radio interference. So they couldn't understand what was happening, and the base was losing contact with them as they were basically trying to communicate what was cracking off in the forest. So what he did, a member of the party was left here, or roughly in this area, to try and bounce the signal off his radio into the security compound, which is right behind us over here. So you can see the east gate. You can see the east gate right back there now. So they were trying to bounce the signal off other radios to try and keep in touch with the base. Unfortunately, afterwards, the base confirmed that they'd lost radio signal. So a lot of the radio signals were either very broken, or they couldn't hear a thing of what was cracking off. We're getting deeper into the forest now, away from the road. The Air Force Base is directly behind us. These fire breaks have been cut into the forest. It's a managed forest, so it has changed over the years somewhat. So we stay on the trail. As you can see now, it's getting denser. This is more like, probably it looked like back in 1980. Denser forest, very old woodland, you know, so a lot of these trees, like over here, you can see these have come a lot later, planted normally, a lot of these planted after the Great Storm in 1987, so it just changed the feel of the place a little bit, but you certainly get the feeling of the old forest here more. And you know, that night when they were running in here and going over the same point, you know, the official explanation, which was the lighthouse, makes so little sense. When you look at this, you think trained personnel would not run in here looking at something, explaining, seeing lights, seeing red, green, blue lights, items flying around in the sky. Whatever they were not a lighthouse. And I challenge anyone to convince me otherwise, because this It just doesn't make sense to me anyway. There we go. So I'm on the beach near where we're staying, and Southwold Lighthouse is right in front of us, as you can see. There it is. Did you see it? If not, I'll wait for it. Now, we are roughly 8 kilometres away from that here, which is roughly how far the Rendlesham Forest sighting was away from the lighthouse. There's no way that they ever mistook that white light right in the distance for a UFO. There we go. Well, it's a beautiful area. On another note, this is an absolute glorious walk. It's so lovely in here. Very quiet, very unspoiled. A little bit eerie in parts, and there's some other stuff as well. There's not just the UFO, but we'll get onto that in a bit. It's absolutely lovely. And I'm sure that night, very, very scary. A lot of the men that were involved that night got treated for post-traumatic stress. Various different things. There was some who wouldn't dare go into the forest. There were some that night that wouldn't go into the forest because of what they'd seen. Certainly very, very odd. So we've come on a little way now, about half a mile. The base is behind us, and as the men approached this area on that first night, in this clearing over here, or over these trees, they saw brilliant white light, incredible white light, lit up the entire forest, and they could make out blue lights and red lights as well in the same area. Doesn't sound much like a lighthouse, but so then they started proceeding. Now, what happened again, because they were losing radio, they got really broken radio signals. Men were left behind to try and bounce the signal off the radios, and Captain or Colonel, I think it was Captain Holt, again I'll correct that, he stepped forward and went right the way to the UFO, which is down there. So what we're going to do is follow the trail all the way in and try and recreate his steps. So this is, we'll carry on basically trying to recreate the footsteps of what happened that night. So we've come further, where I was just filming is up here. So then we come down, and sometimes places just give you a weird feel. This place here, it just feels so out of place. There's like a little meadow up here with flowers in October, and it just feels really different. It's genuinely quite odd. I don't know, you can't really pick it up on the film. It just feels so different here. Stand here, they were seeing the light just over here in the trees, and as we're getting closer and closer, this is the sort of angle they were coming at it from. This is really odd, this bit. It feels completely different to the rest of the forest. It's a lot greener. There's, I don't know, it just feels really different. It's really hard to explain. It looks different if you look at it. I mean, I understand that the forest was replanted, vastly replanted after 1987 when the storms. I hope we put a picture of it on now to show you what happened to Rendlesham, because it absolutely destroyed it. But this bit here just feels so different. So this is one of the benefits of coming and exploring with Sam, is we always get dinner, don't we, Sam? What we got today? Nice cheese cob, Kit Kat, bag of crisps, nice drink. Normally walking around on my own with a bottle of water. It's always nice to have a tea break in the middle. Got this off Daft Monkey, didn't we? So on the night that they were approaching the unidentified object, the animals that are in these fields. He states on his tape, and there's a live tape of him actually walking through looking at this thing. He said the animals around here that were on these fields in this area were all acting really strangely. They were running around, they were screeching and making various different noises, trying to get away from or scared of the lights that were in this forest right here. And all the time there was two more ships above here, which no one really seems to talk about, is the fact that all the time they were looking at this other thing, this craft that was on the floor. There was two other crafts in the sky circling them and basically all around this area. And these were seen consecutive nights. It wasn't just the one night they were seen here, they were seen on nights all the way through that fabled 3 days. So as he fought through the undergrowth, he could see incredible white light here. Incredible white light with blue and red flashing lights all around it. As I said, the wildlife around here was going absolutely crazy. And then through the trees, he actually saw something that he's later said made him change his entire view of life. And realised that everything that used to be is not as he thought it was. And as he approached this, I mean, I can't even imagine, his nerves must have been jangling as he started approaching what had landed in this clearing in front of us. As he fought through, people had stayed back through various different reasons, but people had stayed back. And then as he started coming through this clearing, this object started coming into view. Through the undergrowth, gradually approaching something that he later said he knew was not from this planet. Beat his way through this undergrowth towards this bright light. He found this craft that he explained was like black glass, and exactly as this reproduction. It was on 3 legs, which he took indentations from the next day. But it was right here. In this clearing in the forest. And as he walked up to the craft, it's actually stated that one of the soldiers that stayed back actually saw him walk forward to the craft and put his hands on these symbols, which we're going to do a little bit of a chat about later. This is a reproduction on his, basically taken off his drawings from that day and his notebook. Now these symbols look very familiar to other symbols that have been spotted on different things over the years. But he basically was stood here with this craft, ignoring the stupid graffiti. Just get on my nerves. Stood there. So the day after, he actually came back and took casts of where the legs were, and one of those mysteriously disappeared. He also, that night, rolled off an entire roll of film taking pictures, which apparently when it was taken to the lab was totally ruined. Yeah, like we believe that. This is what he said he saw. This is an exact replica. He helped to design this, so he knows this is exactly what he saw that night, with white light, bright white light coming from it, blue and red lights top and bottom. Now his notes from that night in his notebook, this thing then went from here, hovering with him near it, and shot straight up. And his notes actually say, impossible speed. This isn't anything that came from this planet, or not this time anyway, and that's something we'll get onto a little bit later, because those symbols and what happened to him immediately after his encounter possibly tell a story that's slightly different to what people think. So on that night as well, he found out the day after that when he placed his hands on here, he experienced what he says a data transfer, in that he had loads and loads of ones and zeros floating around in his head, which he couldn't get rid of no matter what he did. So he got a pen and his notebook and wrote it all down. And when he wrote it all down, it just went out of his head. So it was as if they were trying to tell him something in a binary code. Incredible. 2 nights later, the lights in the sky resumed above the forest. And this time, the base commander came out to see what he could find. He came into the woods looking for the lights, and the lights were moving through the trees, and they were bright red. Very important that you say they're bright red. And in his recording, he actually says it looked like an eye that was blinking at him, and they followed it basically through the forest until they got to this clearing. So when he got to this clearing, the animals were going absolutely wild, and over here is the farmhouse. You can just make it out over there. And the front of that was lit by a brilliant light that was moving around this field. Just here. Now the lighthouse is straight in front of us in the distance over there. Or was. That lighthouse has now been demolished. How would the front of that house light up? Well, the light that's behind it for a start. And I'm not being funny, lighthouses just aren't that powerful. I've actually walked on a bit from the landing site now, and this was an area that someone told me about ages ago, because if you look at it, and it's really difficult to portray it in the film, apart from these 2 trees in the middle of this circle, other plants just die off here, and it's pretty much a circle. It sort of goes around here, around the other side of that tree, back to where I'm stood. Look, here we go. And it feels completely different. The undergrowth just dies off right the way around it. And the middle bit, obviously where people walk, is down to the sort of soil. But this scrub, look, it just dies off all the time. Apparently just nothing lasts here at all. How strange is that? Rendlesham is just a brilliant place. So, what's the evidence? It's quite mad, really. I came along thinking I'd probably think it was an absolute load of old rubbish, but I don't know, the more I've seen, it's really compelling. How does... First of all, I can't see how loads of USA trained forces would be fooled by a lighthouse. To my way of thinking, that didn't happen. So that's a load of old rubbish. That is just a plain and straightforward cover-up. Whatever happened down there with that landing site is very, very odd. And it gets even more incredible. So as we leave the forest and then we're back at the man cave next week, I'll do the second part of this video, which will explain more about what actually happened afterwards and what Captain Holt and a lot of the staff that were there that night happened to them, and what the after effects of everything that happened on this particular couple of nights, because it didn't stop there. Lots and lots happened. I'm a bit here and there with it. It's really, really strange. This is a beautiful place, and it's got the strangest story attached to it. I don't know. Make up your own mind. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye. There are some really strange things you find in Rendlesham Forest. Very odd things that happen. But fortunately, my team, who are second to all, have mastered the art of camouflage.
Boo!
Oh, geez.